When the sun goes down, you're probably going to do something your ancient ancestors could never do. You'll flip a switch, light up your room, maybe watch TV, scroll on your phone, or stay awake for a few more hours before going to bed. It feels completely normal, but for almost all of human history, that wasn't possible. For more than 300,000 years, humans lived without electric lights. Most of them didn't even have candles. When the sun went down, the world became dark. Not the kind of darkness we know today with streetlights outside and glowing screens everywhere. Real darkness, the kind where you could barely see your own hand in front of your face, and yet every one of your ancestors lived in that world. They spent half their lives surrounded by darkness. So, what did they actually do before sleep? To answer that question, we have to go back to a time before humans controlled fire. Back then, our ancestors were a lot like other animals. When the sun set, they stopped moving around. Night was dangerous. Predators like leopards, hyenas, and wolves could see and hunt much better in the dark than humans could. Walking around at night could get you killed. For millions of years, darkness basically meant the day was over. Then, something amazing happened. Humans learned how to control fire. Evidence from a place called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggests this may have happened almost 1 million years ago. Fire gave people warmth, it helped them cook food, it scared away predators, but it also gave them something else: extra time. A campfire created a small safe space in a dangerous world. Instead of going to sleep as soon as the sun disappeared, people could stay awake for a few more hours, and those extra hours changed human life forever. What's interesting is what people did with that extra time. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the Juhwansi people in the Kalahari Desert and noticed something surprising. During the day, people mostly talked about practical things. They talked about food, hunting, problems, work, and daily life. But at night, when everyone gathered around the fire, the conversations changed. People started telling stories. They talked about heroes, ancestors, strange creatures, faraway places, adventures, and funny events. Instead of focusing on survival, they used their imagination. Some scientists think these campfire stories helped create human culture. Before there were books, schools, movies, or the internet, stories were how people shared knowledge and taught lessons. The campfire became the world's first classroom, theater, and storytelling stage. Eventually, the stories ended and people went to sleep. But here's where things get really strange. Ancient people didn't always sleep the way we do today. Most of us go to bed, sleep through the night, and wake up in the morning. But for many people in the past, sleep happened in two parts. Historian Roger Ekirch spent 16 years studying old books, diaries, court records, and letters. Again and again, he found people talking about something called first sleep and second sleep. At first, this seemed confusing, but then he realized it was completely normal for them. People would go to sleep for about 4 hours, wake up naturally in the middle of the night, stay awake for an hour or two, and then go back to sleep until morning. Nobody thought this was strange. In fact, it was so common that people barely explained it. So what were they doing during those hours in the middle of the night? The answer is simple. Some people prayed, some thought about their dreams, some visited neighbors, some read or wrote if they had enough light, others simply sat quietly and thought. They weren't worried about being awake. They expected it. It was a normal part of life. People even had a name for this time. They called it the watch. It was a peaceful period between the two sleeps. For a long time, historians wondered if this sleep pattern was really natural. Then, in 1992, a scientist named Thomas Wehr decided to test it. He placed volunteers in an environment with no artificial light. Every night they experienced 14 hours of darkness, much more than most people get today. At first, they slept normally, but after a few weeks, something surprising happened. Without being told what to do, every person started sleeping in two parts. They slept for about 4 hours, woke up for a while, and then went back to sleep. Their bodies naturally returned to the same pattern that people had followed for centuries. Even more interesting, the volunteers said the time between the two sleeps felt calm and peaceful. They didn't feel stressed. They felt relaxed and thoughtful. It was almost like a special state between being awake and dreaming. So if this was normal for humans, what changed? The answer is light. Slowly, cities started using street lamps. Candles became cheaper. Then gas lamps appeared. Finally, in the late 1800s, electric lights spread across the world. For the first time in history, people could turn night into day with the flip of a switch. Humans no longer had to follow the sun's schedule. They could stay awake whenever they wanted. This changed more than just bedtime. For most of history, People respected the darkness. In fact, the word curfew comes from an old French phrase that means cover the fire. In medieval towns, bells would ring each evening to remind people to put out their fires and prepare for sleep. Darkness was expected, it was part of life. People knew that nighttime felt different from daytime. Today, things are very different. Most people spend hours looking at bright screens after sunset. Phones, TVs, tablets, and computers keep our brains active long after the sun goes down. The blue light from these screens can slow down the production of melatonin, the hormone that helps us feel sleepy. In other words, your brain can get confused and think it's still daytime. Scientists have found that when people spend a week camping without artificial lights, their body clocks start returning to a more natural schedule. They get sleepy earlier and wake up more naturally. It's as if the body remembers something ancient, and maybe that's the most surprising part of this story. When we think about ancient humans before sleep, we usually imagine campfires, caves, and wild animals. But what they really had was a completely different relationship with the night. For hundreds of thousands of years, darkness wasn't something to avoid. It was a normal part of life. People sat around fires, shared stories under the stars, fell asleep, woke up for a peaceful period in the middle of the night, and then drifted back into dreams. This rhythm shaped human life for far longer than cities, countries, or even farming. Then, in just a few generations, electric light changed everything. We gained the power to stay awake whenever we wanted, but we may have also lost something that humans had experienced every night for thousands of generations, a quiet and mysterious part of life that disappeared so recently that our bodies might still remember it.